I left when I was about 9, a few days after Khomeini passed away, and the leader of that revolution at the time. And we went to Germany, and a few weeks of being there, I think it was around October 1989, when Germany won the World Cup. So that was very exciting to see as a kid, and growing up in that culture of very, very strict educational formats, and then learning a little bit about German ingenuity, and ended up in undergrad at Western Illinois University, where I completed the program in 2.5 years, and served as a TA in the graduate program in the biology department, and subsequently went to Southern Illinois University School of Dental Medicine to complete the dental education that we had. I was class president the year when 9/11 happened, and that was our first year. I was a first-year student at the time, and it's very interesting, the historic events that I have had the pleasure and the privilege to be a part of and have witnessed throughout my younger life.
So and how did it mold you, Kianor? What did all of this? There was obviously a certain, how can I put this? You very quickly go through school, obviously academically astute. You're going through some historical upheavals, cultural upheavals, that sort of thing. You know, Tehran to Germany to America, that's a pretty heavy duty leap when you're growing up. It's like, so where do you belong to? So how did this all go down for you? How did you assimilate yourself into the life that you currently have? How did you fit in culturally?
Today, thanks to my father, who would take us to India and all the different countries in Asia and Europe when we were young, I got tremendous amount of exposure to different cultures and people. Growing up in Iran, then Germany, and then becoming a U.S. citizen here after being here for some 20 plus years. You get to grow up in Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, and you start understanding people. You start understanding people on a different level, and you can really interact and understand their desires, their ways of thinking. And then I traveled to over 60 countries. You see patterns, and when you ask me in our previous discussion how I'm able to bring 100 doctors together with our board of regents, is having to cater to their respectfully to their wishes and needs is not an easy task. So it molded me certainly to a point where I carry a lot of those skills, and multicultural skills, multi-religious skills, and multi-language skills that I have been fortunate to obtain over the years with me in my professional endeavors, and they're very, very helpful.
And so let's back it up. So you're through dental school. You were saying that you went into dental school because you were thinking about being a cardiac surgeon first. That's a stretch from hearts to teeth. So what happened there?
So my best friend that I had met in undergrad, we both wanted to be doctors. He was going to go dental. I was going to go medical, and I always wanted to be a heart surgeon when I was younger. But then I was volunteering at a local hospital in undergrad. I think I did over 300 hours at this one hospital, taking care of the elderly. And there were nurses at night, and they would tell stories about the surgeons and what kind of lives they were leading and what kind of troubles their kids were in. And they just simply didn't have the time to raise a good family. And that was a very big part of the equation for me. Family is as important as your career, as yourself. So that option started to sort of fade away as I interacted more and more with my colleague. He started he was a year ahead of me, so he went to dental school. I was in touch with him. He was loving it. And then next thing you know, I applied, and the only school I applied to, I got accepted because I had quite a bit of, I had a 4.0, very strong credentials at the time. Yeah, and then I married a Southern belle after dental school.
And you got married 6 times.
6 different places in the world,
6 different places, yeah.
That was in 2008 where we decided to get married. The first one, I'll tell you this, and I don't know, the first one was we decided to get married on a Tuesday. On a Thursday, we were on a plane to Vegas, dressed as Marilyn Monroe and Elvis Presley. In a pink Cadillac, driving around.
Pink Cadillac, holy cow.
And having people take pictures thinking that it was some sort of an act. It was very fun. And then 5 subsequent weddings followed in different areas of the world.
And where were those? Where were those? Like in terms of
So we did 2 in the U.S. in Miami. It was not in Miami. It was in Tampa area. And then we did
right.
one in Hawaii. We did one back at her home in Illinois. And we did one in Germany and Turkey. Plus the Vegas one goes to about 6.
So, okay, the Vegas one's really cute. So, I'm sorry, you did one. She's a Southern Belle. What does that mean?
Well, very far, Southern Illinois, where I set up my first practice in the small town America,
Yeah.
where people have that Midwestern hospitality, and sort of story was her dad started becoming a patient, and then her whole family became patients, and I had a healthcare ball, my date stood me up, so I asked her father if I could take her out to a ball, to a healthcare ball in town. And he said yes, and then I went to her workplace on a snowy day with some flowers, and that's how it all started.
That's how it began. So she wasn't from Tara or anything like that. She wasn't a Gone with the Wind episode, right?
No, this one is very, very unique. She's got a big heart, very, very supportive over the years with every endeavor that we have undertaken.
Sorry, go ahead.
But I ended up getting what I wanted, which was creating a family that I wanted to build as part of my life.
Right. How old are your kids right now? You've got young kids. They're under 5, is that right?
I got one that's 4 and one that's 2. The 2-year-old is a girl, and she runs around all day screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." So it's very fun to go home every night.
I'll bet. Well, talking about going home at night, you got your MBA, DMD. You did this online MBA in what, 2016, you said? See, something like that?
I started in 2013, but finished it in 2016 because I was working during the day clinically, traveling between offices and doing the MBA at nighttime. Some of the courses are very, very time consuming,
right?
Especially when you have to write business plans and that type of stuff. But over a course of 3 years, I finally got it done. Course here, a course there, sometimes 2 courses for a semester, which was full time, and 1 course was part time. And they're like 8-9 week courses. And so that MBA was probably one of the smartest thing I've done in terms of educational pursuits.
Right. So you also, when you say you were working outside the practice or working multiple practices, how many was that?
I left in 2010. We left Illinois and we came down here for the warm weather. I clocked probably over 300 offices. I've either done wisdom teeth in, endodontics, second molar root canals, implants, bone grafts, sinus lifts, before I finally went back into private practice and set up this office that I'm currently in right now. But that was my moneymaker that kept all of the bills and overhead and requirements meet. By no means did we ever come from a wealthy family, so there had to be continuous revenue while doing the MBA in order to be able to achieve the vision and the goals.
So it wasn't just 300 practices. You had a vision in terms of practices that you were going to either own or work in. So you were talking about a proposal that you put out. At one point you had what? How many practices did you have that you had purchased? I
had personally 6, and that was not for me. That kind of idea of bigger practices and corporations and stuff. That's certainly not a good fit for me. But the practices that I actually went into gave me a tremendous learning experience interacting with all of my colleagues to understand what their daily issues are, what they face. You know, back when I started, I built 4 startups and actually helped some other companies build startups in retail settings, medical buildings, strip mall settings, large box settings, conventional settings, and houses and what have you. And every scenario is different, and that knowledge base plus of what I interacted with the doctors when I got to California has really given me a good understanding on the situation our colleagues now face with COVID and startup scenarios versus conventional settings. It's a very dynamic thing to do a startup. There's a whole different strategy that goes into it. It takes about 4 to 6 months to get up and going. But yeah, that was unique. I didn't have that opportunity. I had the opportunity to have lunches and daily talks with the doctors every time I went in when they had scheduled for me to do the things they didn't want to do.
Right. But there was something else that went on at that time that a lot of people would have just said, that's it, I'm done, just going to go back and practice. You had a business proposal, that you had a vision in terms of what could be done, and you presented it, and your IP disappeared somehow.
Yes, I can't mention the company because they eventually settled. I can tell you they were the biggest company in the world at the time. And I had built some back in there in Chicagoland area. I built some in Meyer and also some in Sears when they were still rocking in their Kmart division to test pilot the idea of having offices owned by dentists solely based on a triple net scenario with a large box facility that would allow the high foot traffic to eliminate or reduce marketing expenses to the dentist so the dentist could provide increased access to care and reduce their overhead and subsequently extend those savings to patients.
Right.
The idea was working really good. I brought in some investors. We ended up with the biggest player in the world with a 400-some page business plan that I put together, and that's the most I can say about it. It's all in the public space.
Okay.
Very easily to find, but I can tell you I ended up losing millions of dollars and I had to start over because of what happened there. And then I decided to just throw all my energy and force behind continuing education, getting diplomates and fellowships and masterships and MBAs and what have you. And a good gladiator always keeps coming back.
Right. That's a lot of money to lose, like in terms of, a lot of people would have just called it quits. They said enough is enough, just recoup it. But it kind of lit a fire in your belly, right? Seeing that
No quits, no bankruptcy, no nothing. You're gonna fight through it. That was the thing. And you know, the only thing I learned from that particular thing, it's all a learning experience. You can fall 100 times. If you keep getting up and you keep dusting off, you just have this knowledge. And next time you encounter a situation like that, you have a better approach for it. I got up and I got up strong. But the one thing I learned is not everybody is good-hearted. Not everybody is, even though you can't be naive in business. Business is business. And when you're doing business, it's a whole different ball game, and emotions and being naive and those things have to be put aside, and you have to focus on the business at hand that creates something of value for other people, but you also have to watch your surroundings.
So that's the Rocky syndrome, in other words. You have the Rocky, so you've coined the Rocky syndrome. You've got something that you belong to. You've created the Rocky syndrome. So I want to go back. You also got involved because of the MBA and Bitcoin. I still to this day have no idea what Bitcoin is. I don't understand it. I'm not sure that I ever will, because it's conceptually very unique and distinctive. Can you talk about it?
It was not particularly Bitcoin. When I was doing the MBA, I ended up at a conference in San Francisco with about 100 people that were talking about blockchain at the time. Bitcoin and all of the different products came out of the blockchain concept, which is essentially a decentralization mechanism where two people can interact and lend and borrow from each other without the intermediary in place. They started cutting out some banks at the time. And that 100-person or so meeting that I was there for in San Francisco turns, within 5-6 years, it's turned into an international sensation with conferences completely sold out in Africa, South America, Asia, Europe, everywhere. These guys are doing it now, and it exploded. And the blockchain concept, then at the same time, I was listening to all the doctors whisper in my ear, insurance is screwing me, these DSOs are screwing me, I'm getting marginalized, people don't value my services anymore, everybody's got their hands in our pockets, the suppliers, everybody is in our operatories. I was thinking to myself, if they can pull this off, they can leverage technology and create peer-to-peer systems and eliminate the third parties out of the equation, you could really, really reduce healthcare costs that are out of control in this country and in many other countries in the world. And so you can eliminate the special lobby, not by fighting them in Capitol Hill, but by creating better systems that are supported by what is available to us in technology and social media to
Right.
outcompete them, just like they wish to outcompete us. So I took that concept and I started playing around with it. How can we make peer-to-peer platforms in medicine and healthcare?
Right.
And one thing led to another, and we started with the Extraction Academy, and it was solely doctors involved, no sort of outsider. That led to that Global Implantology Summit that you participated in actually in 2019,
Right.
which then subsequently led to the 2019 Global Executive Summit of important doctors and clinicians in the supply chain that have power. And here we are, the top 100 doctors, which was solely a first true peer-to-peer platform without any kind of monetary gain. Everybody donated time. They came from some 70 plus countries. Doctors bought into this idea and they joined. And then now today we are at the first International 2020 Peer-to-Peer Global Interdisciplinary Summit.
So when you talk about this, it's almost like skipping stones. It's hardly the case. And it's not like you just went from here to here to here. The IEA, who you partner up with someone to do that? That's a hell of a business. In the terms of you're talking about extracting teeth, TRF and this sort of thing that you got into, and that requires an inordinate amount of organization and planning. It's not like you just show up in town, you get a course and instruments and acrylic blocks. It's a little different than that. But how does that start? How did you get involved? Who helped you do it? And who's responsible for the organization?
The Extraction Academy, I founded in 2014. I loved doing extractions in dental school, and then I got into private practice. I loved doing wisdom teeth. They were like, I used to call them whizzies in between the root canals and the and the crown and bridge and the implants and all of that. But I realized that they didn't teach extractions, and talking to some colleagues, they said they'd never done extractions out of dental school. They have done a couple of easy ones, and I'd never understood how you can afford not doing extractions in the dental office. So I thought maybe we set up an academy and we trained them after about 2-3 years of really practicing and learning. I thought we would benefit from setting up an academy that would not only teach them exodontia and the latest techniques and wisdom teeth and impactions and the way we now think about preserving the buccal bone and those concepts, but also about suturing and bone grafting, because whoever is interested in extractions is going to end up doing implants. There are 500 million missing teeth in the United States. You got 1 or 2 million implants being placed by 10% of the dentists. We need more implantologists. There's not enough oral surgeons and periodontists in the world to care for these patients. So in order to bridge them over to implantology, they have to master exodontia. It always starts with having interest in, a lot of times, not always, with wisdom teeth and multiple extractions and so forth. So we started the Extraction Academy with the idea of creating an oral surgery curriculum for the GP, for the in-office procedures that GPs could be doing. Mm-hmm. And that led into many different areas of specializations, from sedation to pharmacology to anatomy to restorative to pros. Implantology is in the middle of it all, because when endodontists are done with it, we come in. And then we brought an endodontist that said, hey, don't extract, save teeth. We wanted to hear everybody's perspective in the academy. And then a curriculum formed with an online version where we took all of the didactic stuff out of the workshops. And we had one-day workshops for extractions, one-day workshops for immediate implants, and sort of are trying to create that bridge for people to get more into implantology. Because all the implantology people, they don't talk mostly about extractions. They're talking about who's the best implantologist in the world. Right. But we want to... But the foundation of implantology is the way we think about how we perform exodontia and how we changed our vision. If you think about the 70s, late 60s, you guys didn't even have a high-speed handpiece that went 3,000 RPM. They're using chisels and hammers, and I can't imagine what kind of a torture situation that was at the time to take out a wisdom tooth. Right. So innovation is new in dentistry. You're not far into it. They've had this earth for billions of years. and we're about 50, 60 years into innovating new products that are making our lives easier. So if you're in the forefront of it, I highly recommend you to put on one of those hats as an engineer. Every time you're in your operatory and something bothers you, create a solution, create an invention.
Yeah.
And that's the approach I've been taking with the patents I've been filing and those kind of things.
We'll address that in a second, but who's on the faculty of the IEA? You've got obviously a broad range of people that support it.
The key individuals that have participated at the beginning was Dr. Hakamian. He came to the very, very first meeting and then immediately joined the faculty. And then a year later, Dr. Thomas Wiedemann from New York University, who currently runs the postgraduate curriculum for implantologists there. He's an oral surgeon as well as has so many different degrees that you'd be quite impressed. But he came in and he was trying to come from Germany, where he had his office in Bavaria and Munich, to the United States. Now he's a faculty and he's a U.S. citizen. And he came and the thing just completely took off. We started doing podcasts. We got workshops put in LA, and then we started doing them in San Diego, and then a year later, it just now it's going on in many football cities of the country, where we go in and gather a crowd and do it. But there's a lot of other faculties and guest faculty members that have come and spoken. Several of them are part of the groups that you have seen, and the Extraction Academy is where it all started.
Interesting. I had an interview with Melvin Maninki the other day, and he was saying he wanted to get in touch with you, and because he's doing stem cells from fat and iliac crest. So he said, "Well, I got to get in touch with Drew Shah, Kianor Shah, because he's doing chorionic stem cells, right? If I'm not mistaken."
Yeah, I'm also I'm a KOL, a key opinion leader for a dozen of companies. One particular venture that I got into was cord blood stem cells. I was able to resolve some crazy, wild cases. One of the most rewarding cases I've done was an oral surgeon that did resection of a jaw that never closed fistulas, and this patient had a fistula draining from here, and the next thing they wanted to go into her hip, and I went in, I injected the stem cells, and the situation went away. The cord, it's a whole different kind of lection. I speak about this in different areas, but you can't get enough stem cells from your own blood and bone marrow. So the next best thing is to either duplicate them from some sort of a tissue that you obtain from the body, and then you run into regulatory problems because the re-injection of them are going to have to be approved by, for example, the FDA. It's no longer an autologous situation.
Right.
So they're doing a lot of research in Europe about gum tissue and extracting certain things, but a lot of the stem cells that we derive from these ventures are either far down the development chain. I looked into cord blood stem cells, where there's a very, very thorough process from the selection until the cells actually arrive at your office. But the cord blood stem scenario is really good because they're the progenitor cells.
Mm-hmm.
And the amniotic fluid is very inexpensive, and there's very abundance of it. And if you compare it to the growth factors in our own body that are relevant in our own blood, you get about 10, 15 of them. But in amniotic fluid, you find enzymes, interleukins, 150 plus growth factors, and other goodies that are in there. So there are a lot of areas that we now extract for stem cells, just like the other doctor as well said. But we use amniotic fluid, we use placenta, we use embryonic membrane in certain cases for restoring bone grafting and what have you. And cord blood stem cells, there's different. You're going for a very small amount because the cord has very little bit of materials in it. But there are other areas where you can use depending on the indication. In these, and there's been research on cord blood stem cells for 30 years. Our colleagues have been using it in medicine, all kinds of different venues. But we're a little behind on regenerative medicine. But what I can tell you, if I can tell you two things
Sure.
that I think is going to be big in the next decade or two for dentistry is A, regenerative medicine, and B, minimally invasive procedures, because the patients are asking for it.
Yep.
Those are the two things.
So when you talk about obtaining stem cells from chorionic or amniotic fluid, chorionic tissue, What's the antigenicity problem? Are there concerns? Obviously, how do you deal with them?
There are some prion issues, but I haven't rarely encountered any. But on a immunological level, I could foresee there being some debates in the literature as to how to implement them. But yeah, there is an antibody concern there. But I would be more concerned with mesenchymal stem cells than you would be with amniotic fluid and those kind of things.
Yeah, interesting. So let's talk about what's going on now. The 100-person peer-to-peer online webinar series, the numbers that you are achieving are staggering, beyond comprehension. So it's your interview. Talk about, you put this thing together, what, in a month? You know, literally in a month. You know, you had to get involved in all the technology. This thing got structured literally overnight because nobody expected this to happen. Maybe, you know, maybe you were working toward it conceptually, but boom, you're gonna, like, speakers and days and, you know, technology and moderators and this, that, and the other, and then you end up with numbers that are mind-boggling. So can we start with the why, the how, the when, the where kind of thing? How did this just didn't fall into place? Nothing like this falls into place. It requires a massive amount of undertaking, you know, planning, you know, strategies, logistics. So how did this all come about?
Well, it starts with the question of peer-to-peer, it all where it started. But now imagine you have a situation where you have had over 300,000 dental professionals tune in. I don't know of any conference where you can go and get 300,000 people in an audience. And at this rate, we may end up at 1 million. We will likely end up, we're on track to end up at 1 million viewers. And that's probably a third or so of the dentists out there in the world.
Yeah.
And that's phenomenal. How did we achieve it? We used the concept and the goodwill and the good heart of our colleagues with leveraging technology and social media to achieve the unachievable. Now, this is an example of peer-to-peer that I've been talking about for several years now, and we actually executed it. And thank you. I mean, I would. This is probably the only reason I would say thank you, COVID. But our colleagues are at home, and knowledge is power. When I came to California, it wasn't like Illinois. Illinois, we had to get headhunters to help us find associates. Here, there's so many doctors, there's abundance, and demand always dictates the business. So when you're in a situation where you can help 1 million of your colleagues by bringing others together that give good lectures and webinars, and everyone donates their time and effort, it's a wonderful thing. And it just doesn't have to be in this 100 situation. So we were going to hold that meeting in November. It was scheduled since 2018 to hold it in November in Los Angeles and do it again like we did GIS, the Implantology Summit at the time. We brought in, I believe it was 50 speakers from 4 countries out of 6 continents there that flew in and came and participated. In this scenario, we leveraged technology and we went back to mass majority of them. There's not all the top 100 doctors are speaking, but we brought in some other doctors as well that can reflect up on the times that the COVID matter and startup situation and all those things that our doctors may or may not benefit from. The information is free. Anyone can enjoy this complimentary material to do what they wish with it. We are not forcing anything up on anybody. These are world-renowned speakers that do this as part of their careers. And a lot of my colleagues, for example, in distant places of the earth, don't have the access and the finances and the flights to go and have a wonderful conference and shake these people's hands and ask them questions, but they do now with this platform. And I'm very proud of the Board of Regents. We decided that last minute when COVID happened that we're gonna move online versus the physical conference. And we're gonna leverage these 100 speakers using technology and try to get to as many dentists as we can to create a maximum information exchange, which has always been the goal of this event. So 70+ countries, different time zones, different links, different people involved. We have different hosts now. The Board of Regents are all participating. As of this week, they're going to be hosting different sessions. We just had Dr. Friedman and Dr. Javid right before I jumped on with you. And I think it's a wonderful, beautiful thing. It's not really owned by anyone. It's decentralized.
Right.
Everyone can jump on that platform. There are no third parties. It's pure information exchange between doctors, and we can reach bigger numbers than any conference ever could.
Yeah.
So yes, it's again the power of P2P, and this is the second example after the platform we created for the top 100 doctors, which was essentially doctors that were in the supply chain, that were educators, that were innovators from all different disciplines, to show how we could all ourselves, you can do this, the next person can do it. It's not about being the best of anything. It's about bringing dentists and colleagues together and creating maximum information exchange, so these third parties don't run all over us.
So the next question is, you have this massive webinar symposium online. Not the webinars, obviously, is online. You have like you're ramping up to what you would expect to be 1 million viewers.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you 2 words: virtual reality. How are you going to? Will you consider implementing this on some level for your for these viewers? Will it be viable? Is it practical? Cost considerations? And is it an intermediary step until people can go back and work in rooms and do hands-on without 6-foot social distancing?
It's a really good question. This is a question to be posed to the Board of Regents. We talk daily on a board thread with ideas, and that's how, it's not just me, it's really the board is behind it, and they're working and helping and sharing and informing and coming up with new ideas. Right now, the job is to execute until the May 30th to the best of our ability, and execute with precision. Getting to 1 million of our colleagues is a wonderful thing. The videos are going to stay up. If you go at Global Summits Facebook page, you can go to a video session. There's no registration process, no membership process, none of that stuff. If you want CE, we have to hire this company to process CE for us. So they have a charge. It's like $19 for a unit or something like that for processing the CE properly. There's certain steps. People have to register to a different channel and take screenshots and answer questions and all those good things that you have with CE for it to be legitimate. But for me or the board, it's never been about the money, because there is no money. It's about getting these videos up there, leaving them up there, allowing our colleagues to come, so they don't have to travel all over the world like the 10 of us did to make these contacts, gather this knowledge, and benefit from it, versus losing millions of dollars or ill advice and ending up having to learn it the hard way. So right now, the objective is to maximize intercorporation, interdisciplinary between our colleagues. What will happen next? I don't know. Maybe some of our colleagues will come out and create 10 better P2P platforms. The objective is to get these third parties out of our industry. They've destroyed pharmacy, they have destroyed medicine, and now they're coming for dentistry, and they have a hard time controlling us because we operate a little bit differently. So they launched insurance scams and scandalous DSO operations, not owned by dentists, where floor managers are telling doctors what room to go into, what crown to prep, and they're struggling themselves now because in 47 states of the United States, it's illegal for a dental office not to be owned by a dentist. There's 3 of them, I believe. And just to set up offices, just set up management entities in Nevada, Delaware, and Florida, and circumventing the laws by having one dentist put their license in 40 offices, and having all these young guys that are struggling with student loans come and push them for production is not what we stand for. This is not us. This is them. You know, we can have great offices, 1 office, 2 office, 3 office, have a good office manager, and do well in our lives, and we don't have to buy into their stories about how it's going to relieve all of their stress, how they're increasing access, because they're not increasing access. We are increasing access. The dentists, they're doing that. So the objective is to get the control back into the hands of our colleagues to preserve our profession. Right. That's what we're working towards. What the next act is, I don't know.
You don't know. Well, let's go back to what you do in terms of being a clinician. You have this magnificent spa. Can you talk about it? Because it's the way it's run.
Let's look at it. I do all my seminars in the office, so let's go look at it.
Okay.
We have a little CT set up here. It's walled off properly for our patients. I only have 2 chairs. I don't like to do dentistry out of more than 2 chairs. I spend a lot of time with my patients and creating that rapport. You have a little bit of a front desk. I do better out of this office than I have in my other practices. We got a little retail area where we have some products.
Mhm.
That's our front desk here, and that's about 1,000 square foot scenario. I'm doing better out of this. And look at our beautiful town here. It's always like this in Palm Desert, California. I don't know if the glare shows it to you.
Oh, we can see it. It's kind of
We're
cool.
always working with palm trees and blue skies. And I've done better in this particular practice than I have in owning 6 offices. I do a lot of full mouth rehabs here. You have an anesthesiologist that sometimes comes in. In my surgical operatory, I use very good illumination and lights.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to do my webinars in the office when it's quiet.
Those are hospital lights, right? Those aren't dental lights. They're hospital. They're
Yeah,
surgical.
they're M1000s. You can get them. You can type it into Google and get them. It's a great investment. You have to have the proper eyewear for the patients so they don't feel. And this is my little family.
Yeah.
One of the patients painted this for us. A
No
patient I
way.
did a
How
full
cool
mouth
is that?
rehab on.
Yeah, yeah.
That
That's so
was
pretty.
done out of oil and that's it. And she did a lot more of those for us. We have become very
Yikes.
good friends. And she has painted our whole walls with oil paintings and
So cool.
such.
Isn't
So
that nice?
it's nice to have a little art. But that's my little office. This is the area. It's our little kitchen area, and I have a couple of Mish books back there, my favorites.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And
He's a good
so,
friend of mine.
so I'm looking at the pictures behind you, and so I'm looking at your CV, and so there's a list of about a zillion things that I wouldn't say dabble in. Obviously, you do a lot more than dabble, but you describe yourself as an artist and an architect, and you were talking about what you do, how you innovate, create, and things that sort of pop into your head. Can you talk about that for a bit?
Well, we all wear different hats. We're artists, we're engineers, we're business people, we're medical professionals, and down the list it goes. But particularly, I still love and enjoy doing some art myself. I do a lot of full mouth rehabs. When I don't have the time, I send it to the lab to do the diagnostic wax up and duplicate the casts and so forth, and send me reduction guides and full mouth temporaries to put patients in for a while. But at times I wax up things myself in the office when I only work 3.5 days with patients. There's time if I'm not doing business. I like to get back into artistry. So I still have my PK1s and PK2s and some blue wax back there, and we'll whip up the flame and go to work. And I'll save some money with the lab, and I got my reduction guide. I duplicate the cast back here with a suction thing and pour up the models and make templates for the temporary, which helps me with my reduction guide. And then I can save a couple of grand. But also it's fun because when you're sitting there and you're building your cusp of carabelli and your
Right, right.
incisal edges and all of that, you're deep into your thoughts and you ponder about your next things in life. And it's not just about doing that. So art is part of us. We were trained to do art in addition to solve problems all day long. That's what we really do from the minute we get up till we go to sleep. That's why I don't know why people are so worried about COVID. We solve problems. We're problem solvers. So we're going to
Right,
solve another problem. What's the big deal?
right, for sure.
But ultimately, we are all artists. We prep teeth. We look at them. We do composites. This is what we do. We're artists.
Right, right. So you also, well, you're an entrepreneur. This much I knew about you. You got patents for implants. You come up with these curved implants. Now, I'm not an implantologist. I'm not sure I understand it, the torque and all this kind of stuff. But you basically you're a manufacturer now. You're going to develop these implants. You organize a manufacturing facility, supply chains, fulfillment, distribution, that sort of thing. So not what was the push? Obviously, you met a need, but nobody's done this before, right? I don't know. I mean, I've seen zygomatic and pterygoid, angulated, but that's not what yours is all about. Yours is very different.
No, and I filed a patent, an international patent in Geneva a couple of months ago, which was just published. And particularly angulation was always a big problem. Restorative is a big problem when you do full mod rehabs, like the conversion and the final prosthesis. And people have all kinds of problems. The lab people hate having to put the teeth, or if you're not using CAD CAM and proper treatment planning and you're placing them freehand, it's really hard to get that right. So a lot of people hate having to put access holes in aesthetic areas and those kind of things. So angulation has been always a problem. We have it in our anterior teeth with implantology, where we now place teeth a little bit more lingual to be able to have that bulk for proper emergence profile. But ultimately, that was annoying to me. So I decided to look into an idea where you could have a precision guided fastener that would be able to flex into a channel, allowing us to place our axis anywhere on a restorative, and started testing with it. And the idea became bigger, and there wasn't a flexible, there wasn't a flexible scenario. But then there's anywhere, not just in dentistry, in any profession, don't we have a flexible fastener? So I pursued that, and I'm not completely convinced yet that we should give up on impact implantology. So I designed a certain wedge type implant that could be used in narrow ridges, as well as with minimal bone removal could be placed, and we started experimenting with those. But I can tell you, if you're going to get into the patent game, there's a lot more than just inventing and having an idea.
Yeah, it's the legalities.
Legalities, and then the capital behind it. It's a long process. You got to do a lot of FEM testing, and then you're gonna have bench testing, you're gonna have this test and that test. And before you get a 510K with the FDA, you're gonna be out a couple of $1 million and a couple of years of gathering data, unless you have a predicate, unless your innovation is not very new. In this predicate, you can bounce off it and get much quicker. Sometimes they might ask for some clinical data. Sometimes they ask for, and you got to go into different countries, or you got to get studies approved by different universities. It's a very long process, but we're in it. I'm fairly at the beginning of the process, but man, am I learning a lot about patent and trademark law, let me tell you.
I'll bet. So you were saying before, if you come into your operatory, you say, well, I don't like this, I need this to be done. You don't just say, okay, I'm going to bend an implant, I'm going to create this. You need molds, you need this type of thing, you need engineers, modeling, CAD CAM, manufacturing process. You have to work with somebody who's involved in that. So, okay, you wake up one morning, you say, wouldn't it be nice if I could have a curved abutment to support my prosthesis? So where do you begin? Like, a great idea, but how do you execute? Who did you meet? Who did you connect with? How did you do that?
Well, it all starts with designing it. You're gonna have to do a lot of drawings, get your mind around. If you have a physics mind, if you have get familiar with a lot of physics concepts. But then the drawing at late nights started, and then you approach a patent attorney. Then you got to make a prototype. It all comes down to the prototype.
Prototypes, yeah.
So we made a couple of prototypes that were functional, and then there are companies like Proto Labs, or there's several of them that have used Shapeways and other ones, where you can, for a couple of $100, send them the shape and they can run it for you. They don't have all the materials you want, because then there's other considerations. Are you working with PEEK? Are you working with titanium? What grade titanium are you working with? Titanium has 40 years of history. Zirconia doesn't have that much history. PEEK is doing really well in the industry. Is there a new material that's going to come out better than the material you selected? Then you have to do all the wording properly in your patents, and you got to keep that in mind. And you have timelines that you have to before things expire, and you can make amendments as you find out more. But you got to get your provisional in as soon as possible, so somebody else doesn't come up with the idea. Once the provisional is in, you have a year time, and you can start working on a non-provisional, running your tests, doing the modeling, getting a prototype, going to an investor, raising some capital, and then taking it to market, and then filing in the country. Unless you want to have worldwide protection, then you got to go to Geneva, where the world body is, and register there under a patent corporation treaty. This patent PCT gives you 18 months in 150 some countries from the time you filed the patent, the non-provisional, the provisional, and any of those member components. 150 or 157. 56 or 7 countries that are part of this. Then that gives you 18 months to test and run around, but at least you have it filed somewhere where there's notice, and then you cannot deviate much from the way you did it. You can change some of your claims and elaborate on them as you make your findings. But the general idea of the concept is at least preserved with one body or another. It's very complex. You have to do a lot of research, talk to a lot of people, and that's just the legal part of it. And you have the operational and the clinical and all of that stuff. But I live for this kind of thing. So, so I like piquing people's brains, running around, strategizing, coming up with the next steps, and it's just what I do.
It's a lot of fun. Now, peak, interesting. That's a word that's coming up more and more in dentistry. I'm not sure. It's a type of composite or epoxy. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but apparently its impact hardness is literally equivalent to zirconium. Is that correct?
PEEK is lighter than zirconia. Actually, PEEK is doing really well, not just for us, but in shoulder replacements, knee replacements. Medical industry is really, really getting keen to the PEEK. They tried some PEEK implants, but dental implants, but it didn't gain much steam. It came out of Europe. But the material is being heavily used in not just in our industry, but in agriculture, aerodynamics. It's got some wonderful qualities, the melting point, the bending flexibility, the torque. It's proving to be a very, very interesting product. I can make flexible fasteners out of PEEK at the right dimension. But again, who is to say that another better material will come out? But when you're talking metal-free implantology and things of that sort, patients are starting to ask now. You know, you tell them, hey, they ask you what sort of implant are you using? I use a titanium. Then they think to themselves that you're not using the zirconia because it would cost you more, instead of you trying to sit there and try to explain to them that this thing's got 50 years of research, 40 years of research behind it. But they don't. So when patients start asking and there's demand, it's time to think about the future. When Nobel and Straumann start getting into the zirconia game, and you got patients asking, again, your business mind has to also come out in addition to your clinical mind, because those guys that are stuck on the 40, 50-year data are going to end up losing out if the zirconia, although we've been talking about zirconia for a very, very long time, it's starting to improve. Patients are asking about it. It's starting to show up in practices. It's time to look into it.
So I'm just curious. I mean, I've done implants, but typical abutments, they make the abutments match with the implant, right? So now you're developing a unique design. How does this connect to a range of implants? Or is this being focused on your wedge implant? Is that sort of the connection?
No, I mean, if I could do it differently, but to be compatible, this flexible fastener can be made with a burnout, essentially a burnout abutment, and leave behind a pattern, a channel that's curved, and the flexible fastener will curve around that channel until it engages the first thread and goes to place.
Nice.
So it can be done with an abutment that isn't zirconia or titanium. It can be done with a burnout and not even have an existing component, and just finally end up in a prosthesis. But ultimately, the idea is to be able to A, immediately access it, B, to be able to seat and remove a prosthetic in seconds without any interference of seating. D, if your screw sits, your prosthesis sits, because you can visually see it on the lingual of any tooth. So X-ray, I mean, it's obviously recommended, but it's not needed. So a lot of good things that would come about it, because you can create a lot more bulk and emergence on the outside. You can eliminate periimplantitis if done properly by having your restorations higher up. Pumping effect is not such a concern anymore because of the curvature in the screw. There is no pumping effect, and there is no micro gap, and if you fully seat it. So there's a lot of benefits I'm working on, trying to test and make sure before we start making claims in the professional arena that we have some data to back it up.
So the last question I'm going to ask you is about your community outreach. You spend a lot of time going out into the community around your practice. Obviously inviting people to the practice to get them a better understanding of what you do, but you support your community in a fairly big way. And can you talk about obviously what it does for your practice is one thing, but that requires an inordinate amount of effort and cost as well. Can you address that for a bit?
We are members of multiple chambers around the area. We regularly participate and attend in community events. As a sole proprietor and as a dentist, if you don't support the community won't support us. For me to stay competitive in my community, I have to be able to care for the community that cares for me. So I go out a lot and I invite people. I hold open houses and parties here, and we support certain organizations during the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, what we are doing is we are maneuverability. I have maneuverability. No corporation with 500 offices can do what I can do, because I can move fast. I can change my mind fast. I can but they have to go through a very lengthy process and a logistics nightmare to get anything done anyway. So for my colleagues that are listening, I highly recommend you to be part of your community, because that's one of the things, for example, that they can't. If you want to stay competitive, you have to have bigger ideas, better ideas. You have to be outside the box. Just sitting there and dumping money into marketing, which is, that's what we do, is not going to be enough unless you're a baby boomer and you have an established base and they keep coming to you because they love the way you look and you talk to them.
Yeah.
But for us younger ones,
or your hygienist is very attractive.
for us, the younger guys, is a little bit of a different ballgame.
So you're a mentor. So I'm going to ask you one last question. I said that before, but I will ask you one last question. There's a individual, male, female, doesn't matter, who is about to graduate from dental school. And they really don't know what to do. You mentioned the fact that there was debt load and this sort of thing. They've been approached by DSOs because the DSO needs the bodies to do the production, but they're not into that. And they're in a quandary. It's like, well, what do I do? I've committed all this time, all this energy, put my social life on hold, study, debt. So, Kianor, so what do I do? Like, what do I do now? What would you tell them?
Don't let the $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 debt intimidate you. Don't build someone else's dream. Build your own dream. Because when you work for them, you get left at the end with lots of promises that have never actually materialized. In order to be successful, I recommend my colleagues to always go and associate with a senior doctor and learn from them and listen to them. You don't have to adapt all their bad habits, but listen to them. Work for 6 months. That's what I did. Work with them for 6 months and then take over the practice, or move on to another situation that might benefit you. But going to the corporations, you're going to lose 6 months, a year of your life, 2 years out of your life, 3 years out of your life, and you're going to have to do it at the end anyway if you want to be successful.
Right.
Have your own practice, live your own dream, use our colleagues, your peers, as a stepping stone to live those dreams that you have. But working for a corporation, unless you're up there in the top 20 guys that have their hands in the scheme, you're not going to be a winner. You're making their dreams come true. And that's the only thing there is to it. Then they pry of the idea that we're in debt and we're desperate and they need to come in and offer us student loan relief. But when after they push you for production from the morning huddles and things get in trouble, they point their fingers at you like you're the one that wasn't coerced to do all of this work. And then, it's a revolving door, and then you're out the door and the next body can replace you. And that's the reality of the matter. Everything seems nice and dandy on the surface, but if you find out what these guys are doing in the background, I worked for 13 of the top 30 of them in my endeavors. So I'm very, very familiar with the corporate structures, with the logistics, with the lawyer that has a rubber band stamp in the back, rubber stamping papers, and all the good stuff that goes on at DSOs. This is our profession. We have done it for over 100 years, and nobody should be able to be in a position to outcompete us in our own communities, to tell us how to practice dentistry, and to do it all in open daylight without some people starting to ask questions. So my suggestion is live your own dreams, not somebody else's dreams.
Fantastic. Listen, thanks for the time. I appreciate it. This was great. I assume you have what? It's 3:30, so you've got another 40 webinars to do today, something like that?
Today I'm off. This was the fourth one we ran today.
All right.
Today I'm going to go home and play with the babies.
That's the most important thing that you do. Kianor, thank you very much for this. It was delightful. I appreciate it. And I'll send you a copy briefly as soon as it's done. And have a very productive month. Until May 30th, right?
What's that?
you're going till May the 30th, right? With
We hope that if you're still alive, you're going to execute and you're going to deliver. But thank you for everything you do for our colleagues. You've brought tens of thousands of doctors together. We need more Kens in this world, and we will be able to master our own profession.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Go enjoy your children. That's important. Okay?
Take care. See you soon, Ken.
Wave to them. Wave to them. Thank you.